How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Tuesday, June the 11th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, David Williams. He's producing the program. You'll be speaking with David this morning when you pick up the phone to give us a shout to get in the queue and on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So stayed up late again last night watching the hockey game. Oilers in trouble. 4-1 loss yesterday at the hands of the Florida Panthers, down 2-0 in the series. It's fairly rare that teams come back from a 2-0 deficit in the Stanley Cup Finals. The last team to do it, the 2011 Boston Bruins, who featured Bonavista native Michael Ryder, who had a pretty solid career in the NHL. Played over 800 games. I think he scored 237 goals. So he was on the last team to come back from 2-0. So we'll see what the Oilers can bring to bear on Thursday night. I got a couple of buddies going to the games, so that'll be exciting for them. And I don't know how big the cricket community is here in the province, but it's growing. I was driving past Kellybrook, the ball field right there by the Greenbelt, and there was a game of cricket on the go while there were some little kids playing baseball. On that front, the T20 tournament is ongoing. Canada actually won a game, beat Ireland last Friday by 12 runs. Today they find out what's what when they take on one of the world's best in Pakistan. So cricket here in the province, people are playing it. All right, let's keep going. Oh, on the Stanley Cup quick. I saw a story really quite strange. So I don't know if you remember Esa Tikkanen. Of course, the Finnish super pest that played for the Oilers and the Rangers back in the day. I think he played some 14 NHL seasons. So he won 4 Stanley Cups with the Oilers, and he won a cup with the Rangers in that famous 1994 win featuring Mark Messier. But he's selling these Stanley Cup rings. His first one he gave to his dad. He said he'd never sell it, but he's selling the rest of his Stanley Cup rings. Now, apparently, some of the members of the Oilers teams from that era have sold their rings. Peter Klima, who died last year, sold his. Willie Lindstrom sold his. And famously, disgraced owner of the Edmonton Oilers, Peter Pocklington, he sold his, and it got $85,000 on the Classic Auctions website. So if you're inclined as a fan and want to put in a bid for one of Esa Tikkanen's rings, the auction closes on the 25th of this month. It's up to about $28,000 American for the Rangers ring. The Oilers rings are going for around $11,000 to almost $16,000 for those pretty gaudy rings. Anyway, you must be struggling if you want to sell your rings, or maybe, just maybe, he wants to put it in the hands of a fan. Who knows? Anyway, let's keep going. All right, so yesterday an announcement that people have been asking for as long as certainly I've been in this chair, and probably longer than that. And it's about more protection for the motoring public regarding moose and the ability to see the moose coming or to keep them from getting on the highway in the first place. So $5 million, $4 billion of which is going to go towards brush clearing, which I know there's nothing quite like a fence to keep them out, but just to give people a fighting chance to actually see the moose. And plenty parts of the province, the alders are right up on the shoulder of the road. So $4 billion to enhance their brush clearing, and $1 million, for fencing. So we knew this was probably going to be the case prior to the announcement yesterday, given the fact that members of SOPAC were in attendance with Transportation Minister John Abbott. So $1 million for protective fencing, a 6-kilometre stretch stretching east and west from the Salmon line to the St. Mary's Bay Highway. So we know that's a notorious hotspot. It has been working out on the province's west coast, the fencing around Stephenville. So we wonder whether or not that will be expanded in years to come, but some more moose fence coming, and hopefully that makes a pragmatic, positive difference. And of course, you know, can't say that it's always speed that's a significant factor in any of these collisions, but sometimes, you know, it probably is. And speed kills. So if you want to pick up the conversation regarding speed, cameras and the like, we're happy to take that on today. And it's been a pretty deadly week on the province's highways. An overturned tractor trailer found the driver dead. A motorcycle that was towing a trailer went off the road. The rider dead. The passenger serious injuries. So it's, you know, I guess just that friendly reminder that there's more and more motorcycles and bikes and scooters and skateboards and rollerblades out there, of course, as the weather picks up. So we got to put our Summer driving head on. Okay. So good old WestJet, we told you last week about the fact they're moving from their basic fare to their ultra basic fare, basically your cattle. So back of the bus, last to board, you have to pay for your carry-on unless you're traveling transatlantic. You don't get any WestJet reward points. And of course, it's quite clear that this side of the country is not really a keen focus for WestJet. But when they announced the Hamilton route, I don't know how many people are going to take that opportunity to travel via WestJet, but less than a month in the air, it's going away. Less than a month. And, of course, that will bring concern, even though there's refunds for those who have booked a ticket on that particular route. And then, of course, WestJet from St. John's to Toronto, going away on the 27th of October. So with their long-term commitment to the province certainly does a job with some of the comments coming from WestJet executives when they made those recent announcements. But the Hamilton route going away as of July the 1st, and the route to Toronto, the October 27th, that is also gone. Okay. And, the concept of paying for booked baggage is one thing, but you got to believe that being charged for carry-on baggage as well is coming in the very near future. I'd be shocked if that's not the case. And we can talk about the backlog of complaints at the Canadian Transportation Agency. The last number I saw, 71,000 cases. And some of the airlines, including Air Canada, they'll try to negotiate their way out of your request for compensation. But it's pennies on the dollar. Yes, it's going to take a while for the CTA to get to your file, get to your case. But if you settle with Air Canada, for instance, then your case is thrown aside. So beware. All right, I was asked to bring this back out this morning. Happy to do it. The ongoing conversation about the contract that's been offered to the group of 22 and the 4,000 plus home care workers. So the meetings are done, and there were some interesting stories told about how some of those meetings went, whether it be the behavior from the floor and or the reaction from the NAPE representative. But now that the voting is on from the 10th to the 14th, it's important to note that your agency may not have registered you. So if you want to have your vote counted, you need to phone the NAPE office to ensure your name is registered. And if you're a home care worker, whether it be how you voted and the encouragement or the recommendation by NAPE to accept this current contract that's on the table, and of course whether it be about pay and or the lengthy 1 year it's going to take for the medical benefits to be implemented. They're saying it's, of course, the insurance companies will take all that time, as opposed to early childhood educators, it's about a 3-month turnaround. So you want to take on home care, we can do exactly that. And just as a tip of the cap to the seniors advocate, Susan Walsh, she was on the program last week, talk about the fact that this is Seniors Month. And the campaign that they're running on social media and the deadline to submit anything, whether it be a 60-word submission, I think they'll take a video as well, is just try to feature a senior, because the concept of ageism is very, very real. And like they say, it's one of the last socially acceptable prejudices. It's to judge a book by its cover. You see someone of a certain age and just assume that they can't execute one task or another. So Susan Walsh is asking for you to make submission, whether it be as a senior yourself or whether it be the grandchild of a senior, to talk about the good things and the giving back to the community that the senior in your life is doing. Let's hope that's a successful campaign, because there should be ways anyway, where we can be a bit more mindful of that entire concept of ageism, whether it be employment opportunities or just general thoughts about when you encounter or see or speak with a senior somewhere in the province. So please do indeed make those submissions. Okay, where is this particular story? Terrible story. We've heard this in the past, but it's just what's going on in the province's emergency shelters. And this one was a detailed story about a lady who was stabbed and killed in one of these emergency shelters. And she kept a journal. Her name was Raina Dove. Kept a journal about just how scared she was in these shelters. And as an end result, she's dead. And that's not the first time it's happened in our province's emergency shelters. So apparently the review has been done to set up the standards. But, let's take it a step further. There's no real discernible numbers coming from Ontario, but outside of Ontario, this province is the only province in the country that pays money to private landlords, of which there are 3 running 7 shelters with a capacity of 79 beds. We're the only province paying them money to manage these shelters for folks who have nowhere else to go. Last year to the tune of $2.7 million. That's up 55% from the year before. And yet the conditions are what they are. You could probably do a lot in terms of shelter and support for the tune of $2.7 million. There's an initial inspection and then probably very little to none thereafter. And the conditions, whether it be exposure to drug use, sexual assault, sexual violence, physical violence, and yes, this poor woman detailed in her journal just how terrified she was. And of course, again, dead. So if the standards have been created, where are they? You know, and updates about what's going on here too. Talk about money out the door. Some $21 million over 3 years for the Comfort Inn, which is still not really up and operational. Last time we heard, there were some 11 residents, 10 staff. I see on social media repeatedly people reaching out to the minister responsible and other people in the government about whether or not there's an opportunity for someone. In this case yesterday, it's about someone who had a bad infection and needed some help. You know, I suppose that can include presenting to the emergency room, but if that's the case, where are we? You know, it's not to come down on Doug Pawson or End Homelessness St. John's and or Fred Hutton or anybody else, but that's a pretty penny that's being paid for that concept and still not really where we need to be. And remember, they'd open the doors. We were told initially that the doors would be open and people would start staying at that 106 Airport Road in March. And it's the 11th of June. You want to talk about it? But that's just an incredible story. And yes, it's not just about the safe and reasonable surroundings. It's a lot of money. $2.7 million for emergency shelters to go into 3 landlords, top right, 7 shelters and 79 beds. You want to take it on? We can do it. But if the standards have now been set, it'd be nice to share them so we know exactly what we're doing and where we're going. Okay, I've had some calls in the recent past about Kenmount Terrace School. And the concerns were not only about timelines to see it open by September of 2026, but even some of the details about how big, how many students, what grades. So the government is now committed to say, yes, it will be ready to go in September of 26. And now we know more about how it's going to be configured. So the school will be from kindergarten to grade 7. Both English and French streams will be in the school. Apparently there'll be capacity as well for pre-kindergarten. So whether it be the parents continue doubt about the timelines, at least we know that much. So it's going to have capacity for some 850 students to be the biggest school in the province, or the largest school in the province. Okay, really don't know what the catchment area is at this moment in time, yet to be fully determined. And I believe the Minister, or Minister Studley, who's the MHA for the area, is interested in coming on to talk about exactly how they arrived at K28 and capacity. But let's add to it. Whether it be with Larkall or Leary's Brook, and a thought from a parent yesterday, last caller, just talking about the fact that, you know, they are really bursting at the seams and they've lost like cafeterias and libraries to be makeshift classrooms. And maybe, just maybe, some of the rooms that can be refurbished in, I think he was going from about Leary's Brook, that money can come in to allow for some of the rooms that can indeed be classrooms to make it a bit more of a functional school. So as a parent in that area, or you know me, anything in the world of schooling and education, completely up for that conversation as well. Add to it. So we know that the province has decided to put naloxone kits in junior high and senior high, which is a real statement on where we are regarding drug use. Now, the RNC are back out warning folks on the West Coast. 2 suspicious and sudden deaths in Corner Brook. So there might be a lethal batch of whatever drug on the street. The cause of death yet to be determined by the chief medical examiner, but we've seen the overdose numbers and just how many people are that close to overdosing, but maybe the presence of naloxone or whatever the case may be, they've been spared. So how we deal with this issue, which is absolutely a health crisis in this country, I don't know. People can talk about education and awareness, and fair enough, but I think it's probably widely understood just how dangerous some of these illicit drugs are and the substances therein. So whether it be fentanyl and the need to update the criminal justice code to deal with these types of issues, and of course there's a less than reasonable conversation sometimes to be had about things like safe injection sites, harm reduction policies, safe supply. I mean, it's all the rage out west, and if you want to take it on, like everything else here, we will take it on. All right, a couple of quickies before we get to you. So, I'm not sure how much traction it's ever going to get on this program, but I'll keep bringing it up because I think this is one of the stories where we have to wrap our minds around it. So we know that the Hogue Commission is already ongoing. An initial report has come from the Justice Hogue about foreign meddling in the elections 19 and 21. Okay. The concept now, and what we've heard from the report come from the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, yet forevermore to be referred to as NSICOP, is that if the inference or the allegations are that there's sitting members of Parliament that wittingly or semi-wittingly colluded with bad actors from foreign governments in what is not in the best interest of the country, but to the detriment of the country, sharing information to whatever level. This absolutely, and I think all parties have now agreed in Ottawa that this belongs inside the Hague Commission for further examination and investigation, and absolutely it does. And let's hope that it's a comprehensive deep dive, because if we have members who are not just colluding or collaborating, and some of it may indeed rise to the threshold of treasonous behaviour, of course we've got to do this, regardless of who you plan on voting for. So hopefully Justice Hogue has this look, and if there's need for any further law enforcement investigation, let's do it. Party be damned. Like, who cares? If we can identify anybody, whether it be an independent or a Green Party or a Bloc or a Tory or a Dipper or a Conservative, let's identify them in the hands of law enforcement and move on. And of course, can't release the names quite yet. There's a bunch of laws regarding, national intelligence cooperation with other countries, ongoing intelligence gathering. And of course, if we release names without any actual investigation and details, then we're playing a really dangerous and risky game. But let's make sure we get to the absolute bottom of that one. And there will be ongoing concerns voiced in some corners about the Conservative Party leader of Canada, Mr. Poilievre. It's the thought that there's another security level clearance that he can get so that he can have a look at this heavily redacted report. Now, Mr. Poilievre has a very high level of security clearance already. As a member of the King's Privy Council, having been a former cabinet minister, he has that clearance. The thought is, why not get the additional layer and the very top level of security clearance to see this document? Well, that's because of the politics of it all. I just don't know how well that's being played. There's nothing that says that he can't get the clearance, see the report, to be better informed, and still ask questions about how the government has behaved over the course of time. I guess the worry there would be that he would be considered to be sharing or leaking confidential information, but that needn't be the case. So, personally, I think it'd be a good idea if all of the leaders of all the parties, of which the other leaders said they will indeed get this top clearance, I think Mr. Poilievre should as well. What do you think? We can talk about it if you're so inclined. Last two quickies here. The concept and the thought that the amount of bonus money being paid to federal government executives is crazy. $406 million of bonuses in 2023, $195 million of which went to bureaucrats in the Crown corporations, $211 million to bureaucrats in federal departments. Since 2015, bonuses have been paid to the tune of $1.5 billion. Every single year, about 90% of the government executives receive a bonus. That averages out about $18,000. But here's a quote coming from the Parliamentary Budget Office. Less than 50% of performance targets are consistently met within the same year, and yet bonuses paid $406 million in 2023. And just to react over the airwaves to the emails that I get every single day regarding some inactivity on behalf of the federal government, DFO. Yes, there are parts of the Maritimes where we know what the dates are for the recreational food fishing for a variety of species, including cod and hake. In this province, we still don't know. But you can safely guess that it's going to be around 39 days and the same old trip limits and all the rest of it. So I don't know any more information beyond that. Lots of concerned listeners sending emails about exactly that. Reminder, last year it was on the 20th of June that they announced these opening dates to begin on the 1st of July. So again, DFO, do us a favor. If you already know what the dates will be, which they absolutely do, just let us know. Right, send out a news release. Give us the dates, and then we can consider what's the coming look for the recreational food fishery this year, and away we go. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. But let's have a great show that requires you on the air to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's begin this morning on line number one. Say good morning to the Liberal member from Mount Sion. She's also the Minister of Digital Government and Service NL, and joins us on one. Minister Studley, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. As you mentioned in your preamble, the government put out a news release yesterday announcing the new information about the Kementera schools. So just wanted to talk about that. So firstly, I guess I want to thank all the parents. So I've heard from many parents, and I know many have been on your show. Thank them for all their advocacy. And it's really important to know what parents think so that we can make sure that we make decisions that are best for their kids. And so I'm also really excited, and I've triple confirmed with Transportation Infrastructure this morning that they're committed to a September 2026 opening for the new school. So I'm not in that area. It's not my area of expertise, but they're committing to that. So I'm going to hold them to that.
It does seem like a really ambitious timeline. I'm not an expert in that type of construction, but with the size of the facility itself and the fact that we still haven't secured all the land, there might be expropriation still required. And I'll get Minister Abbott on to talk to those specifics. But when you got the triple reassurance this morning, any time frames given to you about the final purchase and understanding what the land ownership looks like?
I've just been assured that the expropriation process will happen, and that is kind of run of the mill, and that's not a concern that will delay a September 2026 opening.
Okay.
Yep.
So how did we land on the configuration of K through grade 7 when, in fact, it looks like it's going to be a permanent change that PwC will be permanently grade 9 up, but the other schools, and they tell us they're bursting at the seams. What's the rationale behind landing from K to 7?
Well, originally I was kind of hoping K to 8, but in discussions with education, and this has been an ongoing change because obviously I know everyone wants their kids to go to a new school. When you look at K to 7 and you consider the numbers, and that's so right now they're projecting 850, and that's plus pre-K. So the 850 doesn't include the pre-K. My understanding is you're getting at quite a big school for that young age range. And to add another grade is, significantly would increase the number of students significantly. So K to 7 plus pre-K, and when you think about it, that's kind of 2 years before grade 1. And so really, if a student starts a pre-K the year they turn 4 and go to grade 7, that's 9 years potentially. The younger kids now will get to stay in the Kenmount Terrace neighborhood. So I think that's fantastic. They are looking at potentially grade 8 to 12 going to PwC. That is not confirmed yet. Minister Howell, even this morning, I spoke with her again, and she confirms that they're still looking at class size and composition. And so that's good. That may impact, what happens after Kenmount Terrace and then the catchment areas and the feeder systems. But one idea right now is that from 8 to 12 is in PwC. And I think that's an amazing opportunity because PwC will be next to a brand new Aqua Arena and a brand new track and field facility. So what an amazing opportunity for those students to be next to some national class training facilities. And then I also want to talk about the Learysbrook Larkhall because I've heard from parents about those schools because we know in this September St. Andrews and Larkhall are going from K to 4, and then grades 5 to 8 are going to Learysbrook. So I've been assured that there is enough class space for those children, especially with the grade 9s going to PwC. I've been assured that we're going to make some accommodations for gym equipment to make sure we have enough for the grade 5s. And we are doing something behind the school, behind Learysbrook, to help the grade 5s get some, more outdoor space. That's still in the works. And then I guess two final things I just want to mention. One key thing to me that makes this all work is the 1.6 busing rule. And so, as you know, as of September, everyone will get busing. There's no 1.6 busing rule anymore. So no one across the province will have to worry about that. And then finally, I have gotten confirmation from Mr. Abbott and Mr. Howell that the three of us will do a town hall shortly for the parents of these communities, in the area. And so we're just going to be working to set that up soon.
So help me understand how the issue is going to be addressed in Learysbrook and Larkhall, because they are quite literally bursting at the seams. And if you talk about Learysbrook itself, 500 students now, it's going to be 560 come next September. So a school that's already overcrowded, what exactly is going to be done to accommodate an additional 60 students?
So I think the key thing there is the grade 9s that are currently at Learysbrook are going to go to PwC. So they're leaving a year early. So that takes out, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that takes out a year of students, right, going from Learysbrook to PwC. So that will accommodate a younger year going into Learysbrook. And I'm assured that there is enough space in Learysbrook for all those students.
Okay. Anything else on the schooling front before we move along? Oh, actually, I suppose I should ask. You said, and I think rightfully so, that people would love for their children to attend a new modern school, but yet to be determined is some of the things regarding teacher allocation, class composition, the catchment area. When can people understand that? Because especially when it comes to children who might want to enter the French stream, that advance notice makes a lot of difference when people are talking about big things in their life. So when is the catchment area going to be settled?
So I don't have a definite date of when the catchment area is going to be settled. In my discussions this morning with Minister Howell, she just confirmed that was a key priority for them, working with the NLTA. And so I'll certainly be pushing them to get that done ASAP. But I have been assured that the school in Kenmount Terrace will have early French immersion, and the numbers do account for any children who are currently in French immersion and living in Kenmount Terrace to come back to Kenmount Terrace to that school to do French immersion if the parents so wish. So that 850 does accommodate those students. Okay,
let's move on to things that are absolutely inside your portfolio. Where are we on the speed cameras, the additional 10 that are going to move around, but where are they going to begin? And I know the warning signs have to be part of it. It's not a gotcha, on the blind. So do we know where the cameras are going to be?
So we're just putting the final touches on the RFP to go up for a vendor. So I'm hoping to have that information later on this summer.
Okay, and this one inside your department is important, and it hasn't gotten any comment from you as of yet, but it's an internal audit looking at how workplace accidents are investigated and looking for more resources to make sure that we can improve the system. Quick question right off the bat is, why is there a 2-year time frame associated with concluding these investigations? Why 2 years?
I'm not sure why. I think in legislation there's a 2-year maximum, because I have asked the team, do we need to change the act to make that longer? But I was told that after 2 years, kind of the quality of the evidence and the that kind of information is less valid, or I guess valuable. But I guess what I will say on the audit, I firstly want to thank the internal audit team, because this was before my time, but the deputy minister before my time asked internal audit to do this review. So that happened, and I also want to thank our occupational health and safety staff, and we want to make sure that we have the right people, the right resources, because this is incredibly important. So I think the internal audit team did a fantastic job with their recommendations. We wholeheartedly accept all their recommendations. And our primary focus is on the investigations, and we work with Justice and Public Safety on those. But in amongst the investigations, then we're also implementing the rest of the recommendations.
I'm not so sure about the quality of the evidence being a concern. I mean, we're solving murders from decades ago. I mean, some of those stories happening here in Alberta, so there's an awful lot of, ways to do these types of investigations and to preserve evidence and to conduct interviews, what have you. So I'm not so sure about that. But what can you say to folks who think that maybe some companies have been let off the hook? According to the audit itself, 1/4 of investigations surveyed weren't finished before that 2-year decline. Will we be adding resources to ensure that 2-year timeline is dealt with in pragmatic fashion, and or I guess coupled with maybe expanding it via legislation? Because if 1/4 are possibly being let off the hook, that's not good when we talk about workplace safety and the safety concerns being addressed legitimately. So what do you say?
So that's a very important question. I guess as minister and my executive team, we are not involved in those day-to-day decisions of who gets charged. Like the Occupational Health and Safety Division, they're kind of at arm's length. While I am ultimately responsible, and I take full responsibility for that, they are, they do make those decisions with Justice and Public Safety. I have asked my team on numerous occasions, do they have what they need? Do we need to change the act? And so I'm assured that, implementing the recommendations of the internal audit that we asked for, we're on the right track. We've made some changes already. So, for example, Occupational Health and Safety had a policy team. So now we've moved them with our other policy team within the Confederation building and moved on staff out of the Occupational Health and Safety office to let them focus on the workplace investigations, I continue to support the team, and anything they need, I will do my best to fight for them.
Because there's even examples where I guess the 4-year window that they looked at in this audit was from 16 to 2020. Half the time when they brought the charges, at the 11th hour. There was one case in particular, 3 charges were laid, and in 2 of those charges, no evidence was presented. So it really seems like either we need to up the training regarding our investigators and or add investigators to it. Because when you add up that 1 quarter, never saw a charge filed, they just ran out of time. Half, when they did lay the charges, right there at the 11th hour. So something obviously isn't working. So you acknowledge that, and whatever repairs need to be done will be done.
Yes.
Appreciate the time this morning, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Sarah Sully, Minister of Service and Digital Government. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking EI. Don't go away. Welcome back to the programme. Let's go to line number 2. Let's take it more to one of the staff representatives at the FFAW. That's Elise Stewart. Good morning, Elise. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay. Thank you. How about you?
Oh, I mean, the sun is shining. There is no complaints here.
It makes it better. I'm not 100% sure what you want.
It makes everything better.
Fair about that's well said. So I think you want to talk about employment insurance, and just for a Coles note set up here.
Sure.
Last year in the fall fiscal update, some of the employment numbers here were encouraging in this province, but as a result, there was a change to how EI was calculated. Where do you want to begin?
Mm-hmm. So I'll begin with, let me do just like the information telegram here, which is that the unemployment rate has dropped in the NL region. There's 2 regions in Newfoundland and Labrador for EI. One region is the St. John's area, and then the other region is kind of everywhere else. So both rates have changed. In St. John's, interestingly enough, the unemployment rate has actually gone up, and then outside of St. John's, the unemployment rate has gone down. Now, that kind of has an adverse effect on qualification amounts and the amount of entitlement. So for folks that are living outside of the St. John's economic region, you now need 490 hours to qualify for regular benefits because the unemployment rate has, again, dropped to 12%, which is kind of, it's the lowest it's been in a long time. And again, for folks inside St. John's, the unemployment rate is 7.1%. So now you need 630 insured hours to qualify for regular benefits. So the reason why this is, it's kind of a lot really difficult for seasonal workers is that the unemployment rate has already changed. Now, this is the second time that it's changed in a very short amount of time. So it's very difficult, especially for seasonal workers at our plants, to know, okay, by the time my season ends, am I going to qualify? Am I not going to qualify? The bebopping is really difficult in creating that stability for our workers, especially, again, for plant workers.
Yeah, and sometimes the employment numbers are a little bit tricky to fully understand. For instance, if people living in rural parts of the province have left for urban centres, consequently that would impact the employment numbers. Plus, we don't know how many people have just left the labour market in full, so it's always a little bit misleading, potentially, if we just look at the high-level number.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. It's very nuanced in that way, Patty, because we're kind of taking data that is sometimes delayed, and a fluctuation point of a point percentage can have a huge impact on how much folks are going to have to, how many hours they're going to have to work to qualify. So the difference between 12% and 12.1% is like 50 hours, right? Which seems, a lot of folks listening to be like 50 hours, that's not that much. For seasonal workers, that's an extra week of work when you're already, kind of threading the needle a lot to even get the 14 weeks. So now we went from 14 of your best weeks to 15 of your best weeks, and now we're at 16 of your best weeks, which again, when you're scraping by to get the 14 weeks, that 2-week increase is, it's detrimental to say the least to our seasonal workers. And the Liberal government, the Liberal government federally had made promises when COVID happened that, we see the cracks. We are going to totally modernize EI. Don't worry. I was a part of the, roundtables, hours and hours and hours of work with MPs promising that, okay, we're ready to fix EI. And here we are, 2024, it's 4 years later, and all those promises have been clawed back completely. And we keep hearing, we see you, we hear you, wait till the next election. But, the next election is going to be tumultuous, I'm sure, to say the least. Yeah. And we need these promises now. We can't wait for the next election, which should be a different government altogether, and likely a government that is even more against the EI system as it stands.
Well, because if people lose out on some employment insurance, they'll end up availing of some other pots of money as opposed to payments that have been made by employees like me into that pot.
Right.
So Where are we with the divisor? Because one of the changes last fall, it moved the divisor's years from 14 to 16, and just for the basic definition of it. So that's the number of weeks used to calculate your benefit. It's 55% of the average of the top earning weeks. So the divisor 14 means the benefit is calculated using the average of 14 best versus 16.
Yeah.
So where are we? Is that still the rule?
We're at 16. So the divisor, changing the divisor, it's a formula. Of course, it's based on the best number of weeks you need. So it goes from 14 to 22 weeks. Yep. So in St. John's, we're at 20 weeks right now, and in a place like Toronto Centre, you're probably looking at 22 weeks because there's such a low unemployment rate in those areas. Now, usually, historically, outside of St. John's, we've been holding 14 weeks for a very long time. Honestly, I've been at this a while with EI policy work, and of course, a lot of works in membership servicing for EI, and I've never seen it bebop like this in such a short amount of time. So again, we went from 14 weeks in April to 15 weeks in May, and now we're at 16 weeks in June. Now, this could change again. July 6th is the date where they'll do another look, and they'll change the divisor as needed. So, I don't know what could happen. It could go down. It could go up. And if you're a seasonal worker who, again, is already looking at, oh, my goodness, how am I going to get my best 14? Now I got to get my best 16. What am I going to do? And there's a lot of conversation around EI. I think people are really scared about EI. They hear EI and they go, ooh, that's complicated. And it really doesn't have to be complicated. There are ways to make this system easier to access, easier to administer, and the government had promised to make those changes in modernizing this system. However, it's totally stalled. So the current Minister Bossenau is not interested in these conversations, not interested in making these necessary changes that were really, again, Patty, we were well on our way when Minister Qualtrough was there. But it's really, really disappointing to see that there is a stall. And again, we're seeing in real time what that stall means to workers that are already so vulnerable in getting their best weeks.
What are some simple tweaks to make it easier, more accessible?
Yeah, so the simple tweaks is like have a minimum qualifying hour. So the qualifying rule now so Newfoundland and Labrador, we have two regions where we know that people travel back and forth. Your postal code might be inside St. John's, but you might work outside St. John's, or vice versa, right? There's a movement between Newfoundland and Labrador that we should have one regional minimum, and the same goes with across Canada. So we get a lot of calls. Of course, I work at FAW. We get a lot of calls asking about EI and EI-related questions, and it doesn't have to be that complicated, because if there was a standard minimum across the country, we wouldn't have to be doing this every month where we're in panic mode about finding out what the divisor is and how it's going to change. So a standard minimum qualifying, and also a benefit floor. So folks remember during COVID-19, dare I say it, there was the CERB, and the CERB had to come in to kind of stopgap the EI system, which was totally overrun. But some benefits of the CERB system was the access. So everybody was able to access, and there was the floor. And at that time, they also put in place a floor to the EI system, which was a $500 a week minimum. Currently, to get top, it's $668 a week, but we would like to have that floor put back in place. So you can go anywhere from, you can go get as low as $200 a week up to $668. But if you move up that floor and, reduce that qualifying amount, it just makes the system easier to administer across the country, not just here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
And Randy Boissonnault, of course, is also the minister responsible for the labour market transfer dollars, of which there's $16 million fewer for this province, $635 million fewer for the country, to assist some of the most vulnerable people in society to try to get meaningful, gainful employment. Anything else this morning, Elise, while we have you?
On those payments, it's really interesting too, and I would encourage folks to reach out to your MPs and to the provincial government, which is that we really don't know a lot about where that money goes, what it's being used for, because it's supposed to be for skills development, all these kind of reentering the workforce programs. But I haven't seen the budget for that. Where is it going? How is it being spent? And that's a lot of money that we're talking about that's supposed to enhance the EI system and enhance skills training here in the province. So ask your MPs, ask your MHAs, where is that cash going?
Yeah,
a little task for folks on the line here this morning.
I've seen a few of these employment support agencies report how much money they've been able to avail of inside that labour market transfer dollar. And, there's some 17 of those support organisations around the province. And we've had some of their executive directors on to really help us understand exactly what fewer dollars means for ongoing programs, like at Avalon Employment. It's maybe the autism program suffers or is hampered by it. So, I'd like to see breakdown of exactly how the money is handled. But there is still $142 million. We're just talking about, I think it's 16.7 or 16.8 million fewer. I appreciate the time this morning, Elise. Thanks for the call.
Oh, thanks so much, Patty. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, we'll try to take a break on time. When we come back, Amanda's next to talk about some of the details we've heard announced yesterday by the provincial government regarding the Kenmount Terrace School. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Amanda. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing okay, thank you. How about you?
I'm good. I'm just calling about the Kenmount Terrace School. I know Sarah was just on, and I caught bits and pieces of what she was saying. But, I mean, she put a Facebook post up in our Kenmount Terrace group explaining, I guess, the government statement or whatever, and saying it was 850 students, etc. And now she said, like, gratefully she explained that that does not include the pre-K. However, we have over 900 between Larrysbrook and Larkhall currently. She's explaining that the grade 9s going to PWC will alleviate overcrowding, class sizes, when we know there's more grade 5s than grade 9s. So you're actually putting more students in the system into Larrysbrook. We know the COVID baby boom is coming up. The kindergarten classes are going to be substantially larger in Larkhall. So I'm not really sure how she's projecting that this school will be sufficient for the catchment area, and totally like leaving the grade 8s out of it, whether PWC will envelop them, or, you know, like, are they going to keep Larrysbrook open? There's so many unanswered questions, and I just feel like the media release just was like a stopgap to stop the parents from asking these questions. I have emails from Sarah Studley saying that there is no dispute on the land at all, and it would not hinder the build of the school. However, now it's being expropriated. So, like, you're being told one thing, and then you find it out on your own, and then the government is saying something else. So, like, we're just really confused. Daryl was on yesterday, asked for the town hall, and she apparently is going to have one now, but I don't, like, Minister Howell has yet to even acknowledge an email from any parent, same as Minister Abbott. And since the school was announced, Minister Studley is also not responding to any emails, and just instead posting to our Facebook group or what have you with incorrect numbers, and not listening to the concerns that we currently have, whether or not the school goes up in 2026. There's still issues with these two schools. One was not built to house elementary students, and one was built in the 60s when my grade 2 child can't even open a window because there's wasps getting in. Like, you can't ventilate either one of these schools properly. I
think that's a bigger conversation about air quality in public buildings, especially in schools. But there's not even enough math available to understand what the reconfiguration for next year is going to look like, and whether or not the grade 9s leaving Larrysbrook going to PWC is going to free up enough space for the additional 60 students. I don't even know if there's 60 grade 9s in the school. I have no idea. But there are some confusing things being brought forward. And you mentioned the catchment area. I suppose none of us are really going to know exactly how it's going to work until the catchment area is understood, because that will come with all the issues regarding teacher allocations and all the rest of it, and just, you know, some of the complicating factors regarding the fact there will be a French stream there too, and people can go to wherever they want when there's a French stream in play. So, yeah, it's one thing to have the very basics announced, but that's all we've got really, is the very basics.
Yeah, and like the parents understand the basics, but it's the bigger picture we're looking at, because like the French immersion students, people have left to go to a school outside of our catchment zone for not just for French immersion, just because the class sizes are smaller, the facilities are newer. Like, now they have that group of friends at that school, so she's assuming that they're going to come back to this new school in Kenmount Terrace, which may or may not be true. There's a very high level of new Canadians moving into Kenmount Terrace. There's people renting up there because we all know the housing crisis, which is a different scenario. So people are renting up there with small families as well. It's not just about the people who actually own up there. We're constantly taking in newcomers from Newfoundland, from all over the world, and if you look at the diversity in the two schools, you'll see it. Then you've got St. Andrews in the catchment area that's already been reconfigured in 2017, where Pennywell went over there to reduce the sizes. Then they reconfigured this year to try to reduce the sizes. Beachy Cove used to go there, but now they're at an intermediate school. So, I mean, like, they've done continuous reconfiguration of the catchment zone, and it's still not solving any problems. And you drive by in the morning, you can't drop your kid off. You have to park somewhere else and wait out in all kinds of weather outside of Lark Hall with a 4- and 5-year-old, because you cannot, there's no kiss and drop zone like there is at Elizabeth Park or Octagon or Rennie's River or anywhere like that.
Yeah, they used to call it the kiss and cry area.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one thing you said that I want to pick up on is the students that would live very likely in the Kenmount Terrace catchment area that have gone elsewhere, whether it be for class sizes and or to get involved in French immersion, that they may or may not come back. The likelihood is they probably will. I mean, who's not going to want to go to a new school? Preference is given to those living in the catchment area to be involved in French immersion. So I would imagine if we had a real grasp on those numbers, you can count on a significant percentage coming back, I would think. What do you think?
I think that, so the number of 850, if you include those people that are coming back in, as well as the new, like the young kids that are going to be in kindergarten, and Kenmount Terrace is continually growing. So your numbers of 850 in 2024 aren't going to match possibly like the numbers in 2026. So it's something we got to get ahead of, and to say that the school is going to be open that year, speaking to people from the schools, it's very aggressive and ambitious to even do that. Plus, with Kenmount Terrace developing, you're going to have more families moving in. So, the math isn't mathing to me. There's 920 in Learysbrook and Lark Hall currently, and then the number is going to be less in the new school. So I'm not understanding where these numbers and projections. Lark Hall apparently is projected to be over capacity within the next 5 years. So I don't know where they're getting.
I don't know either. But
they're figuring it out.
The fact that it's K to 7, they're talking about grade 9s going over to PWC, but if it's going to be K to 7, then I guess that frees up some additional space because there'd be more grade 8s possibly going to PWC. The minister also said that's part of the thought that's being considered, but I'm still not sure that really settles all the math as you described. The student population between Learysbrook and Lark Hall versus 850 for Kenmount Terrace, there's still something missing inside for me too, which is why we're going to try to get the education minister on.
Well, that would be great if she could answer some questions that the parents have. And we're all open to the town hall meeting for this. So at least we can get our concerns about the current system addressed, as well as finding out what the plans for the future system is, because there's a lot of unknowns. And I just feel like it's a Band-Aid over a bullet hole at this point. And because the parents spoke up, that the government has to react instead of being proactive.
We'll see if we can't get around, because, of course, for me, inside the world of education, this is just one piece of infrastructure and some of the math associated with. There's lots of questions about education that we really need to talk about a bit more frequently. I appreciate the time, Amanda. Anything else this morning?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Let's keep rolling. Let's go to line number 3. Kimberly, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you today?
Doing okay, thanks. How about you?
Well, I wish I could say I was good. I've got an issue here in Harbour Grace. I have no access to my water and sewer easement. So it all started a year ago. I had a water issue here and called the town of Harbour Grace. Anyway, through the jigs and the reels, my neighbour built a deck, pool / whatever, back in, I'll say, 2013. I'm not sure on that date because I can't seem to get any information from the town. So he built over my easement. I was 5 months hooked up to a fire hydrant because I couldn't get access to fix it. So I was forced to get a lawyer, and which I did, and so far it's cost me approximately about $15,000. So in November past, 2023, I gained access to the 3-meter easement, and I was able to fix the water. So my neighbour ended up, so he had to remove half of his deck, I'll say, that was covering my easement. So, like I said, that was in November. That's when I got my water back. May 17th, actually, it was May 16th, I contacted Mr. Dan Coombs because for a couple of weeks I've been noticing my neighbour working on his deck. I had no issues with that. I mean, I really didn't think that this man was, had any intentions of building back over my easement.
Oh, so just help me understand what that construction has to do with your water. What exactly happened?
He built over my water and sewer easement. A large deck with a pool.
Okay, and so maybe I'm just stunned, but building something overground, how did it impact services underground?
Because the deck is over my easement, the posts and stuff are all cemented down, and we couldn't get under to dig it up. Like, it's...
Okay.
Like, the deck is probably, I don't know, I'll say 2 or 3 feet above the ground. So it covers my easement. So, like I said, on May 16th, I contacted Mr. Dan Coombs and the mayor, and I asked him, was there a permit issued to my neighbour regarding this structure? And his reply was, I don't know, but I will find out and I'll get back to you in the morning. So the next day, I got a hold of Mr. Dan Coombs again, and he indeed confirmed, or he said, no, Mr. Earl does not have a permit. But he said he will be in the next day, before the end of day, to pick up a general repairs permit. And I said, okay, so does he have permission, to build back over my easement? I couldn't get a straight answer from him. It was just like, well, he's going to put back what he had there before. Okay. So anyway, I've been dealing with this ever since. So about a week and a half ago, last week, I sent in the application to the appeals board because I can't get any information from the town of Harbour Grace. And
you're asking pretty fundamental questions.
Right. So I brought the application in to the appeals board. That was on last Monday. So Thursday, the officer in that department had emailed myself and the town of Harbour Grace some documents and so forth. So they were asking, well, not asking, it said on the document that, the authorities were immediately to put in a stop work order. So I was all day Friday, actually Thursday, when we got those documents. So Friday morning, this man was still working on his deck. So I was trying to get a hold of the town manager, throughout the day, and I was trying to get a hold of, the appeal in St. John's, and couldn't get a hold of anybody. But finally, around 3 o'clock Friday afternoon, the town manager and another personnel issued my neighbour a stop work order. I'm going to say within 2 hours, the man was back out working on his deck. So I'm trying to contact the authorities, and I can't get a hold of anybody to see what's going on. Because I'm here watching this man in front of me literally build over my water and sewer, again, for the second time. Like I said, the first time it was done, it cost me $15,000 to get access to it, to get it fixed. I don't have another $15,000. I actually didn't have $15,000 in the beginning. I had to borrow it to pay for lawyers so I could gain access. So anyway, the stop work order was put in place. Within a couple hours, he was back to work at it. He had others in there working with him, flat out, so fast as they could go to try and get this deck done. Saturday evening, I'm going to say it was approximately about 3 o'clock, the town manager finally emailed me back. And all she said was, this man has raised a safety concern. And basically, we gave him the permission to go ahead and secure this safety concern. So, I mean, I initially thought myself, okay, well, if there's a safety concern, I understand. But, you know, if there's a safety concern, should somebody come in and inspect this area before the town would give him permission to go ahead and finish what he's doing? So his safety concern, I still don't know what it was, because the town of Harbour Grace will not, they won't reach out to me and tell me. I've sent numerous emails to, you know, all kinds of authorities. So this man is still this morning down working on this deck. So at this moment, well, from November until May, half of that deck was all opened on one end. So this man had no safety concern whatsoever, obviously, because if he did, that would have been barred up. But it wasn't. But all of a sudden, when he was ordered a stop work order in you know, last week, within a couple of hours, he has a safety concern. Like, I thought a stop work order would, you know, just means that. Stop work. Secure the area with caution tape or whatever you have to do so nobody can enter. But instead, the town of Harbour Grace gave permission to this man to continue working on his deck. So right now, his deck is basically, I'm going to say, 100%, well, not 100%, but 90% finished. He's just about ready to hang his hanging baskets over my easement. So my question is, if tomorrow or next week I have a sewer problem, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I have zero access.
I don't know, but I can, you know, ask the mayor directly about what a stop work order actually means. It's not a suggestion, because if it's applied to me, it means exactly what you just said. It means stop work. Simply because of the time, I'm going to have to leave it there, Kimberly. But keep me in the loop if you have any luck with this.
I certainly will.
Okay. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's take a break for the news. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Jillian, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks so much for taking my call.
My pleasure.
So I would like to kind of echo some of the parents' concerns regarding the press release yesterday for the new Kenmount Terrace School. So although the government did publish, you know, a full-page press release on this school, there are still many unanswered questions. A previous caller had mentioned about the capacity of the school. So in this press release, we were told that the school can accommodate more than 850 students. That is slightly confusing. What does more than 850 students mean? Is that 851? Is it 860? Like, I'm confused as to what that actually means. Is that 850 with the option to expand the school, set up portables? So there really is a question of that, and I believe our previous caller had spoke about the current populations at Larkall Academy and Leary's Brook Junior High. For September coming, it's going to be over 900 students. Actually, I think it's like 920 right now. So this doesn't include those large number of children that are going outside our zone right now to many different schools for French immersion. And I have to say, I think that number must be underestimated, because in my area alone in Kenmount Terrace, I'm going to say almost every second school, the child goes to Elizabeth Park or St. Teresa's. They're going for French immersion. So, I mean, when we're talking about 850, even taking those grade 9s out of that system, putting them in PWC, you're still landing on your 800 plus max. Take back in what I estimate must be hundreds of children that go to French immersion in outside zone schools and the growing population in the area, and is more than 850 1,000? Because if you're holding a school K to 7, the numbers don't add up. And you've said it, like, where are these projections and where are these numbers coming from? I had a parent that commented on our community Facebook group that said, oh, great, the school's going to be open for 1 year and have to reconfigure again because it won't be able to hold K to 7, so it'll be reconfigured to K to 6. And is that what we're looking at, putting millions into this brand new school that really just won't be able to hold the capacity that we need? So if catchment zones aren't strategically changed, how are we going to fix this problem? The government also published the, I'm not sure if you saw that, Patty, the What We Heard report. So this was from feedback from parents. There was about 20 days and we were allowed to put in our thoughts on the reconfiguration, but they published this What We Heard report, and the main concerns of parents was school capacity and catchment zones. So the report came out and there was some nice little bar graphs and stuff like that on it, but to what purpose did this report come to? Because our concerns are we're just not fixing the problem, and if we're investing millions into this brand new school, we need to have these conversations, and these thoughts need to go into play first.
Well, it just really basically feels like, the questions were being asked, no answers were forthcoming, and this is the very, very basics of the beginning of what this school is going to look like. It's fine to tell me capacity, whatever over 850 means, fair point that you make there, and, still haven't figured out all the land requirements as of yet, and we don't know an awful lot of what's left here. Until the catchment zone is really carefully defined, none of these questions are going to be able to be answered pragmatically.
Exactly. And currently, we don't see the numbers from other schools. What is the capacity of other schools, other elementary and primary schools in the area? Do they have capacity? Because we're talking about all these schools and they're overcrowded at current state. Is there capacity in other schools that we may be able to fix some of that problem so that we're not taking away children's libraries, wondering Learysbrook Junior High, I think they did a walkthrough only recently with the grade 5s that are transitioning over, but they don't know what classroom will be theirs. Stuff like that is not figured out because they have to move around classrooms to figure out where they're going to put everyone. So, looking at capacity in other schools, is that an option? And if it is, it's likely something we need to look at now rather than all this falls off, the portfolio now for summer as people go on vacation and school's out, and then we forget about it. So that is a big concern. And then, of course, there's the other, we've been told September 2026. Excellent. Great if we can have this, new modern facility. Why wouldn't it be modern? I don't know, but the press release says it's going to be modern. So September 2026. I spoke with an engineer only yesterday who had experience in builds such as this, and when I said the opening is for September 2026, he laughed. He figured if construction doesn't start until into 2025, which we're told the RFP process is not going to begin until the fall, so we're looking at 2025 potentially for construction. He said it'll be the fastest build of a building its size to likely ever happen in this province. So I'm not sure why we're delaying the RFP process until the fall. We're losing a full construction season. Will the land even be cleared? It was brought to the attention that right now the land still has power lines and everything running through it. So why are we delaying it, for starters? But then what do we do with the children that are currently Learysbrook Junior High for sure is a major concern. Minister Studley said, hopefully removing the grade 9s will add capacity in that school, but it doesn't. We remove the grade 9s, we're adding actually more grade 5s. So in effect, Learysbrook Junior High, out of all the reconfigurement, is actually gaining a higher student population. So they're gaining a higher student population. They were already bursting at the seams. We're speaking over and over again about they have nowhere to play. It is so unfortunate. And now we're adding younger kids to the school system where there's nowhere for them to play. If they want to go outside, they have to cross a busy street where there There's no speed bumps. There's very little signage. There's no crosswalks. Like, it is really a terrible situation, and we're inviting, ministers to come and view the space that they have. The school had proposed even fencing the parking lot so that some students can safely play, but as far as I know, that was turned down. So they need upkeep of the areas that are around. There's a questionable green space. Does the city own it? Does the Pentecostal church own it, apparently? Does the schools own it? They don't know who actually owns some of these spaces that they may be able to upgrade. But the lack of resources is, it's just not... It's not acceptable. I had one parent also who commented on the Kenmount Terrace group that said her child just finished, is on their way now to PWC due to this reconfigurement. She said Larkall, her experience there was good, and I mean the teachers at Larkall are just second to none. Like, they make the experience at Larkall what it is. Resources aside, they're just fabulous. But she said her child's experience at Leary Brook Junior High was, quote unquote, a nightmare. So she's fearful now to go to PWC because she thinks that concerns and stuff of parents and children are ignored. So it's really unfortunate, but something has to be done now because, yes, sure, potentially we have a school in September 2026, but where are we now for these children in the next couple of years?
Fair question. And there's, again, I think this was just addressing the fundamentals of what the school might look like as opposed to factoring in all of the different intricacies that you and others have mentioned. And I appreciate your time this morning, Gillian. Anything else before we have to go?
No, I think that's all. I do want to say thank you to Minister Studley, who has said she's going to make a town meeting happen, town hall, because parents really want that, and we want it now before, like I said, summer happens and this is pushed to the wayside. So, we're thankful for that, and we want it to happen sooner rather than later.
100%. Appreciate the time, Gillian. Thanks for the call.
Thanks so much, Patty.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm trying to recall how long it took, say, for instance, to build Waterford Valley High. It's going to be a very similarly sized school. Waterford Valley High has around 800 students, so again, quite similar in size and scope. I'll try to find out that information to see if it jibes with the thought that if we don't begin construction until next year, now maybe they could do it, I don't know, but it will be a feat that we see very infrequently regarding government action. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, plenty of time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the founding chair of the Food Producers Forum. That's Dan Rubin. Good morning, Dan. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Always great to speak with you.
Happy to have you on the program.
Yeah.
So making some forward strides. I mean, when I saw the email come out earlier, talking about over the course of the last 5 years, able to raise about $500,000, talk about support for local food production, distribution, all the work you've done to come up with a more accurate number about just how much food is produced here. And now, logical next steps, you're looking to hire a full-timer.
Yeah, we've done a lot in the 5 years. As I sit back and look at it, I'm frankly amazed. It's hard to believe that we started just as an idea 5 years ago, and now we're rolling, and we've done the provincial conference in 2022, the Where's the Food survey, which you know about because I was talking on air about that. And I'm currently leading a project called the Provincial Food Network. So I've had to step out of the chair's role because I had to get paid finally, because it involves traveling all the way up to the Labrador coast. We're building root cellars. We're building greenhouses. We're helping people buy tractors. We're doing the dirty deed, And here's one little story that up until about 3 weeks ago, we had a couple of $100,000 to work with for the project that I lead now. And we got that money partly from the provincial government, Industry, Energy and Technology, partly from the federal government through the Community Sustainability Recovery Fund. Some of it came from Memorial and 2 different grants. But as of about 2 weeks ago, we got notification that I had applied for funding from an international group supporting climate change adaptation in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And we were one of 14 sites out of more than 250 applicants. And that will give us almost another $200,000. So one little story of what that means. On the way back from Labrador, where we were building a greenhouse in Mary's Harbor with the local people there and the Nunavut government, we stopped at Grossmorn Farm and Market in Norris Point. And that's where a couple named Laurie and Boyd have been farming their butts off for the last 5 years. They said when we retired and moved from Ontario, we didn't plan to be farmers. And they're doing all the work by hand. So we were able to generate enough funds to help them buy a walk-behind tractor, kind of like a glorified rototiller. And I said to Laurie when we stopped there on the way back from Labrador, so what kind of difference has this made? She said, oh, my God, it used to take us 3.5 days on our knees to prep the soil in our greenhouse. With the walk-behind tractor, it took 15 minutes. And I said to her, well, what does that mean for the food you'll grow this year? Because they're supporting more than 50 people through a CSA distribution system, a subscription system. She said, oh, it'll at least increase what we're able to grow by 50%. It'll probably double it. So that's just one anecdote from 14 project sites, 3 in Labrador and 11 here on the island. So that's not the only project that we've got on the go. We're going to apply for some funding for labor research because people are looking for farm workers. And we have teams working on education and teams working on food storage and distribution. It's crazy. So we need an executive director, someone with vision and the skills to do communication and fundraising and keep things on the rails. So the call is out and we're taking applications.
Amazing advancement over the course of 5 years. Just a couple of quick random questions. You talk about traveling around community gardens, greenhouses and the like. What role do you think hydroponics can play? Because I know you can operate a greenhouse year round, but not quite like you can inside the world of hydroponics. I know it comes with an initial fairly significant upfront startup cost, but to me, it really feels like if we are going to try to pepper the landscape with greenhouses, many of which might need to be hydroponics, what do you think the role is?
It's a good option, and it's certainly part of the mix. There's no doubt about it. Scott Neary and his partners at Green Farm NL in Mount Pearl are growing beautiful greens and herbs inside a warehouse under lights. But the thing you have to realize about that is that you're taking the place of Mama Nature. You're providing the light, you're providing the heat, and you're providing the nutrients. And there's things about what soil does once you have a fully restored ecosystem in the soil that can't be duplicated. It doesn't mean that hydroponics is a bad idea. It is a good idea, and it's a great way to grow leafy greens right through the winter, things like strawberries, even tomatoes. People in Holland have been doing this for decades now, and they're really good at it. One of our partners is planting 10 acres under glass for hydroponic growing in Labrador. So we see that as part of the mix. But the thing about a greenhouse, and I have a small one, the ones that we're building now in 3 communities, Mary's Harbor, Kings Point this week, starting in Kings Point, and Port Blandford, will be different from hydroponics because what they do is they're more like a toolkit for extending the season. If you're growing hydroponically, everything has to stay indoors all the time until you harvest it. With a greenhouse, on a platform the size of a kitchen table in my basement, with lights on 2 levels, I can start 200 seeds. So when you have a greenhouse, you can start plants that then expand out onto the soil. And if you restore the vitality of that soil, which we're learning to do by cycling the manure and the nutrients back into it and letting it heal, it's amazing what you can grow. One of our sites is Upper Humber Settlement in Cormac, where a couple named Laura Lee and Mark LeDrew are growing vegetables that I swear they sing Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. These are the most beautiful lettuces I've ever seen in my life, and they're doing it without any chemical inputs. So to circle back to your question, I know I get long with this stuff, but I'm passionate about it. Hydroponics is a great element to have in the mix for certain kinds of crops, but it's certainly not the only way or the best way to grow large quantities of food.
And this one is a bit tangential, but we know there's a big growth in backyard farming and homesteading. I just want to talk about the role of youth when we talk about food instability and/or food production. We have the Little Green Thumbs program in the classrooms, which seems to be really getting some traction from the students that I know. But also, just want to get your thoughts on a couple of teenagers here in the province that have won significant scholarships from TD. That'd be Leah Casey and Casey Budgell, and they're actively, whether it be community gardens out in CBS or part of the youth mentorship group. But how do we ensure that their voices are a big part of going forward? Because farming has been, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, a bit of a lost art. The mega farm has overtaken the small family farm that used to be everywhere in this province, including my grandparents. So how do we incorporate the voices of Casey and Casey Budgell and Leah Casey into this conversation?
Well, Casey Budgell is one of our project leaders. She is certainly a hero of mine. When we first encountered her, she was a 14-year-old who wrote us a letter and said, hey, I've created a community garden for my school project at the Academy in Kings Point. Now we need that greenhouse. And I talked to her on the phone, and her vision was complete. She saw the whole thing in her mind's eye, restoring the agricultural capacity which once existed in her community. And particularly in a small community, let's say like Balleen or Kings Point or even Pooch Cove, where we've got at most a couple of thousand people, you can actually feed the community if you get yourselves organized. So your question is, what is the role of teenagers in that? And there's the bad news and the good news, as there usually is. The bad news is that we're not showing people when they're young that growing food is a good thing to do and that they could have a career in it. And we need to get that message and the hands in the dirt into the schools. And actually, our education team has connected with curriculum developers at the Department of Education, and we're talking with them about developing units, curriculum. There's also community education being done at College of the North Atlantic. But, one of the big puzzles right now is you can't find people who know how to work. And Casey is one of the exceptions to that. She's worked so hard and done so much for her community that, as you just mentioned, she's won a complete 4-year scholarship for 4 years at university. And she's 17 now, and she'll be heading off to school in the fall. But I would say, and it's great that we have the Little Green Thumbs program and other programs going on, that the problem is the school year doesn't match the grow year, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
If you try to do a harvest festival, which they are doing right now, well, it's the wrong time of the year. I don't have any tomatoes, ripe tomatoes, But the thing about this is that we need the education and the training, and we need to invite more people to work experiences where they can go, hey, this is cool. I like this. Anyway, Patty, I've got to go. Thank you for having me on. And if anybody wants to apply to be our executive director, write to us by email or go on our website, foodproducersforum@gmail.com, and we'll send you the details. So by email, foodproducersforum, FORUM, @gmail.com.
Good luck with it.
We'll talk soon.
I look forward to it, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Dan Rubin, founding chair of the Food Producers Forum. Let's take a break. When we come back, Jim Healy's with the Singing Legionnaires. They got an event coming up. We spoke with Jim, but the deadline is soon coming. Loretta wants to talk about offshore wind, Capelin, and whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. This information, I was wondering aloud how long it took to build Waterford Valley High, and this is from a listener. Waterford Valley High was a 3-year project with a season of groundwork, site work done beforehand. The new school location has a lot of bog that in itself is a major undertaking in groundwork. You're probably looking at 6 or more months of groundwork before a foundation can even be laid. Appreciate the info. Okay, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Jim Healy. You're on the air.
Hello, Paddy. It's Jim Healy from Singing Legionnaires. Paddy, we had a function an evening music in Downey for last Thursday night. We had to cancel it or postpone it and ended to Saturday night. The reason I called in, Paddy, I've got a call from a veteran who is not affiliated with Legions, and the way he heard about it on the air. So I was wondering, any more people out there who were in the military that don't who would like to come to our function, could they get in touch with me, let me know, because as the people want to get outreach to people who are not in not the service, so we're. So I know we get the word out to them. If anybody listening like to go to this function on Saturday night, we got money from the Veterans Affairs to look after the meals, whatever, and need any transportation. So it's so just reach out to see who and they may well like to go.
So Jim, did the money that you brought in, did that involve reducing the ticket price? Because I think it was $75. Someone told me the other day that it's now $60.
We reduced the price. Yeah.
Okay, good news.
We helped us reduce the price of tickets, and those who had tickets beforehand, we'll phone them, let them know they have a refund, of $15,
So you get the Single Legionnaires, you've got a meal to be served, you've got special guests Patrina Bromley and Aaron Windsor. That's going to start about 9 o'clock with the Walsh Brothers on tap.
The dinner starts at 6:30. The show is probably 7:30 to 9 o'clock. Then after we got a dance with. Oh God, I can't think of his name.
The Walsh Brothers.
No, we had to put. They couldn't make that. We had to go with Sam Butler.
Okay.
Sam was going to play from 9 till whatever, and the dance part is open to the public for $10. Right?
Yeah, and it's either prime rib or salmon. And
prime rib or salmon, yeah.
Right, and if anybody would like to get involved, your number's right on the poster, isn't it, Jim?
Right on the poster, yeah.
So do you want me to give it out?
Oh, sure, why not?
So Jim's number is 709-738-2982, and you can also buy tickets at the Music Collection Dance.
That's the wrong number.
Well, that's what's on the poster.
Oh my God. My number is 753-3121.
Okay, so maybe this is the number for the the Music Collection, 738-2982.
Yeah, Music Collection, yeah. But if a veteran wants to contact me myself, I could arrange for him to have tickets, but I'd like to know as soon as possible, Give
us your number one more time, Jim.
It's 753-709-753-3121.
3121. I got it on hand in case anybody wants it.
Yeah, good.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Eddie.
Break a leg, Jim. Enjoy it.
Okay, buddy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Okay, let's keep rolling here. Line number 2. Barry, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
Patty, I'd like to talk this morning about the Sharing Harvest program. The Capeland are going to be coming into our beaches now relatively soon, hopefully this month or early next month at the latest. And just like to give a shout out to the general public that if you're down getting some Capeland, get some extras and donate to the food banks. It would be a good idea to call the food bank ahead of time to see if they will accept it. And if you don't feel like making a donation to the food banks, get some extra Capeland and donate to some of the senior citizens in your life. You'd be surprised at their response. As well, Patty, hopefully the food fishery is going to be announced. I'm not talking about that tomorrow, but food fishery will be announced very soon. And hopefully the recreational fishers will be able to get some and donate to food banks or to senior citizens in their lives as well.
Yeah, I'm anticipating the food fishery announcement is coming next week.
Say again, Patty?
I would imagine that announcement on the recreational food fishery comes next week.
My gosh, yeah. But, so I'd just like to give a shout-out for the Sharing Harvest program. And, there's lots of people down there, and when the Capeland are around, just a matter of taking a couple of bags and getting some and, give to the senior citizens or the food banks.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, we know how it's worked with a bit of moose meat that has been donated to food banks and given to some seniors and what the reaction has been. I would imagine it's going to be very similar with a feed of Capeland being delivered.
Yes, absolutely. And if anybody needs any information on how to prepare or donate the Capeland, you can go on our Facebook page, Sharing the Harvest, NL, and see about, you see my phone number there if you need any other assistance. By all means, give me a phone call. I'm up for that. And, just to increase the donations. We hear every year people talk about, we get some extra fish and we'll give to the food banks or give to senior citizens. But and not to be pessimistic, but I wonder how many people are doing that.
I don't know. I have no earthly idea.
Yes, I understand, and just throwing it out there. So, the Capeland are free. The codfish is free, other than you drop a gas, I suppose, and your hook and that. But all this food, all this free food, Patty, is at our doorstep, and especially in these times of food insecurity issues, it'd be a time for general public to be able to pitch in and donate to the food banks or to senior citizens.
Fair enough. I appreciate the time, Barry. Anything else before we go?
Paddy, I was on another note, Paddy, about the announcement you made yesterday by the government about the including $5 million for brush cutting. $4 million went to brush cutting and $1 million for the fencing. That's meeting me with open arms. It's a lot better than increasing the moose increasing the moose licenses. And I seen on the one report there, though, that the reporter said that the moose population was 125,000 moose, and that's so far out in left field. I don't know where she got that to. And then with the one of the people that were interviewed on the story about it said from SOPAC said that there's on average still 700 moose vehicle collisions a year. I'm looking online here now and said that it went from, and this is from Wedgwood Insurance, the number of collisions in Newfoundland and Labrador is decreasing year over year from 609 in 2012 to 435 in 2019, for a difference around 28%, fewer. So, and we've been talking about it as well, Paddy, when you're driving out the highway and byways, how often you see a moose, and the answer is not very often. And I don't mean to be any disrespect or anything to anybody who's been in a moose vehicle collision, Paddy, as I've always said. But, it's better than putting out more moose licenses, which was not the right solution in the beginning as well. We felt that it should have been a Department of Transportation issue, and indeed that's where it's fallen into the laps of the Department of Transportation now.
I appreciate the time, Barry. Off we go.
Thank you, Paddy. As always, it's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Take good care. Bye-bye. And someone just sent me a note, asked me to repeat Jim Healy's number with the Singing Legionnaires in case you wanted to go and to attend that event, especially if you're a veteran. So Jim's number one more time, 709-753-3121. That's Saturday night at the Legion down in Pleasantville. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking pharmacare. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Mary Shortle. You're on the air.
Oh, hi, Patty. I just wanted to tell the listening public that Peter Julian, who's the MP from Westminster Burnaby, he's the health critic for the NDP. He's touring across Canada over the summer. He's coming to St. John's this weekend, and he's hosting a public forum where all the public are invited to speak about the pharmacare bill and what it is, how it's intended to improve health care, what are the next steps, and answer any questions that people have. And I know here the issue of diabetes medicine and devices and oral contraceptive is as big an issue here as it is everywhere else. So it'd be a great opportunity for folks to come down to the Legion in Pleasantville Saturday at 1:00 and ask Peter some questions and hear him explain the process and next steps. And in particular, I think what has to happen next when negotiations start with the provinces.
Well, that's where some of the confusion lies, and people seem to think that this is already done deal, but not so fast. Bill C-64 is still a living, breathing document that, as far as I can tell, has yet to get third reading, make its way to the Senate. Am I right?
You're absolutely right, Patty. It's done its third reading, though it's passed. It's in the Senate.
Okay.
The anticipation is that it'll be through the Senate and receive royal assent before the summer recess, and that hopefully then will begin the process of negotiating with the provinces. But also the other things, once it's passed, the diabetic and contraceptive medications and devices will automatically start right away once that's passed to be paid for, and there's a whole host of what that includes. And I know Peter can explain it because I don't understand all the medicines, but there's a lot of them there. But it will also help develop, they'll start to talk about the bulk purchasing of medicines, and that's going to be saving millions and millions of dollars for the government, as we know. They're going to talk about a national formulary of essential medicines and the beginnings of the expert committee to ensure that the proper implementation of pharmacare happens, because it also says in the legislation that it will conform to the Canada Health Act, which means it ought to be universal and publicly single payer, no extra cost for people. And all that has to be worked out with the provinces. process. That's going to take some time, of course. But this is the very necessary first step. And, of course, it's a historic achievement, really, to even have that legislation hopefully passed in the next couple of weeks.
This go around, the budget allowed for $1.5 billion to accommodate diabetes drugs, or type 2 diabetes drugs, and contraceptives. But when you talk about purchasing power, and I try to get a lot of information from the Parliamentary Budget Office as opposed to the parties because of the obvious. So prescription drug spending in this country in 21-22 was around $37 billion. Then the breakdown of how it was covered, 46% was actually covered by public sources, which we'll dig into in a second, 40% by private insurance, and 14% paid out of pocket. When we talk about public sources, the negotiations with the provinces are going to be difficult, especially out west. They say, look, we already have provincial plans in place to expand further coverage, whether it be for type 2 diabetes or contraceptives. Why not remove a different layer of bureaucracy and just give the money directly to the provinces? When sometimes some of it is simply about hating the Liberals or hating Trudeau, this one makes a bit of sense to me, because we are creating a big bureaucracy as opposed to expanding provincial programs that are already in place. What's the thought process about that not being as good or a better idea?
Well, what I was hearing, from my colleagues when we have meetings and stuff about it, is that they will talk about the programs that are in place. And my understanding is that it's very similar to what you're saying. Now, I don't know all the details, and of course they have to be negotiated, but it's about if there are programs in place already, then it would be either topping up or giving money to the provinces to allow them to do that. But it has to be the same, universal, right across the country. And I guess that's what the negotiations will be about. What's the national formulary of medicines? What are those medicines? It has to be in a bulk buying program, because that's where the biggest savings will be there. So how is that going to work and get distributed to the provinces and territories? So I agree with you. It's going to be very complex, but it's doable, and people are very optimistic that once this bill is passed, that they will be able to negotiate something that works for everyone. And I know from just what I've been hearing at the doors and from people contacting me, and that is that there's a lot of families in this province with diabetes. I think it's in Canada it's 1 in 10 and 20% of seniors or something. But there's a lot of people who are struggling with those costs. I mean, I think there's imagine the extra burden on the families if you have children who need those medicines and adults as well, but how expensive it is. So there are people who are really excited about it and looking forward to it. I think, too, it takes the pressure off healthcare costs for the provinces as well, because we also know that a lot of people who can't afford to take their medication get sicker because of that, and that's also going to cost way more money in healthcare. So that has to be weighed in as well. I talked to a woman the other day. She's sick herself, and so she has a lot of medication she has to take. She has a child with special needs. He's not diabetic, but he has special needs, and she makes like $1,400 a month. And so I think of people like that and how that's going to benefit them. And I think the provinces, because we've been talking about this for a long time, the provinces have been already talking about it with the federal government and with health ministers across the country about how we can make this work to actually save money on health care and also put money in people's pockets, because it really is an affordability issue too.
Yeah, we'll see what next steps look like. I mean, I'm not surprised there's going to be some sort of staggered rollout inside of farm care, starting with the two areas we've mentioned. But I mean, it's important to note, this is probably the biggest move inside of healthcare since probably 84, when the Canada Health Act was passed. And we can talk about dental care as part of that as well. But even like the Medical Care Act, it was introduced in 1966, not fully implemented until I think 1972. So even to get that properly organized with the provinces took as much as 6 years. It's probably going to be very similar here. I'd be curious, I know I'm not going to be able to be the fly on the wall, but what's next? Because we're not even at the end of the road with these two first coverages. So what gets considered next as per universal pharmacare, which has to be portable and accessible, so says the Canada Health Act, which is supposed to jibe with. Give the folks the details one more time where they can hear from Mr. Julian or ask him questions.
It's Saturday, the 15th of June, so this Saturday coming up at 1 p.m. and it's at the Legion in Pleasantville on the boulevard. There's a room in the Legion called the Alley Room, and that's where he'll be. That can accommodate a lot of people, and we've tried to spread the word to individuals, but also to organizations that represent people who fall under those two categories, but also who represent people who greatly benefit from this. And so all are welcome. Please come and ask him the questions. He's well versed in it. He's been dealing with this at the national level for a while, and he's very, very excited about being able to talk about this issue with people and answer their questions.
Appreciate the time, Mary. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Take care now.
Right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's keep rolling. Before we get to the news, let's go to 6. Good morning, Loretta. You're on the air.
Hi, how are you this morning?
Grant, how about you?
I'm grand, thank you. I want to talk a bit about the offshore wind farm proposals. So all this week and in the next couple of weeks, during the month of June, the regional assessment boards are holding in-person sessions in various communities on the island. I'm going to concentrate a bit on the area of Placentia Bay because that's where I live and where I will be affected the most. Yesterday there was a couple of sessions held in Grand Bank, and this afternoon, there's going to be a couple more held in Marystown, and I encourage as many people as possible to attend the sessions and to put forward their concerns, especially fish harvesters who are going to be the most affected. I think that government, both provincial and federal, are making Newfoundland, putting them on the map, I guess, with energy-wise and efficient, but it's going to become at the expense of the harvesters in the bays that these areas are being proposed for the wind sites. And the areas under proposal are the same areas that we, in Placentia Bay, fish our crab. The same depths that they need are the same depths that we fish in. So on the eastern side of Placentia Bay, the tanker lane runs in, and like it's all the vessel traffic, Comachance to Whiffin Head, Marine Atlantic Ferry, the Port of Argentia, which is a very busy port, container cargo ships, etc., and everything that's coming in over there now. But on our side of the bay, on the western side of Placentia Bay, on the Bjorn Peninsula side, I'll say, we've been bombarded this last couple of years with the Greek sea farms that have taken over quite a few of our waterways with salmon pens and farms. And now we are going to be hit with the proposal for the offshore wind sites there. And these wind turbines they're mammoth structures. The spin of the blades, the heights can reach up to 230 to 250 meters. The average size of an offshore farm as of 2023 was 78 to 130 square kilometers. Like, that's a lot of waterway to be taken up. We fish our crab, lobster. There's cod spawning grounds in the areas in Placentia Bay, and the 3PS cod stock is not in the greatest of shape. So how is this activity going to affect our spawning grounds? How is it going to affect our lobster habitats and our crab grounds? The turbines are either going to be floating or they're going to be stationary. And if they're stationary, they're going to be pawl driven into the seabed floor. And what is that going to do with our species that we fish? The acoustics travel far in the water, and when the pawls are being driven, you know it's going to affect the different animals and creatures that are in the water. So how is this not alone the area that is taken up, but it's also going to I think it's going to have a detrimental effect on all the species that are in our area. Most of the boats in this area are all smaller, inshore fleet, and what negative effects is it going to have on our enterprises if we want to sell it? Who's going to want to buy them? It's going to decrease the value of our fishing enterprises.
I know the FFAW has been at the table, and these, what you're talking about is the land that can be, or the water that can be considered for the offshore proposals, because there aren't any formal in place as of yet, as far as I know. And the amendments to the Atlantic Accord that are required for the potential for offshore wind, we're led to believe that that's just about finalised too in the House of Commons. So these proposals, we've been told, Minister Parsons has told me many times in the past, that these tires have been kicked over the years by some potential proponents. So we'll see what comes to pass. And we've had the FFAW staff representative on who works on this science-related matter about the consultations and the hesitations or the concerns that obviously your industry would have, because you're right. It has been seen as an interrupter. People have asked quite clearly about whether or not we're even allowing consideration in some of our prime fishing areas, especially as we talk closer to shore. So fair ball. I guess it'll be illuminating that once all the amendments are done to allow for proposals, what the proposals actually look like. Because there's going to be some questions about proximity to market and where the market might be. Not to say there isn't a thirst for alternative forms of energy, but there's still some pretty massive questions out there about whether or not people are going to have to bring a PPA to the table.
We've asked all the questions, but we've gotten no answers.
Yeah, okay.
The only answer we've got is we'll take your concerns and pass them along. We aren't the people making the decisions. We're just doing the assessment. But, so how can we actually fight back against it when we don't know really what's going on? We've been told and another issue that we've had, we've been told that there's going to be electromagnetic interference with our equipment on our boats. What dangers is it going to pose in Placentia Bay? It's one of the foggiest bays probably on the island. If you check with the marine forecast, it's usually foggy out in the bay. So how, the dangers that it's going to pose for vessels that are traveling in the bay, because we get a lot of vessels in that bay. We have tanker traffic on one side, we have the Marine Atlantic Ferry, we have all the fishing boats that fish. There's 10A inner and 10A outer, so the bay is kind of divided. But on our side of the bay is mostly smaller fishing boats, as it is on the other side of the bay. But all of the species we are going to be all affected by it. The fish harvesters, we have no choice. It's our livelihood, but we're not getting any answers as to what's going to be done, if it's going to be done. So how do we fight back against something that we don't really know what's happening?
Yeah, I suppose even an avenue for said fight can't be created until we actually see a proposal and what it includes and where it's going to be and some of those additional details. But look, fair enough. When this becomes a reality, which I assume is going to be in the next week or so, insofar as the Atlantic Accord is concerned, I don't know when proponents are going to come forward, but we'll allow for plenty of debate on this programme about those plans for offshore wind. No problem at all.
Well, Patty, as a fish harvester, I am vehemently opposed to the offshore wind farms in our area. And unfortunately, I probably won't be able to get to the meetings this evening because of where I live, and I have to take a ferry to get there, and there is no ferry run today. But ironically, it's also smack dab in the middle of the lobster and crab season, so most harvesters probably won't get to these regional assessment meetings and voice their opinions. I know, so I want everybody send an email, send off something just to let them know that we're here and we're fighting against this. We don't want our areas taken up by it.
I appreciate the time, Loretta. You're always welcome.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's take a break for the news. When we come back, it was a couple of weeks ago that the province's Auditor General, Denise Hanrahan, released a report talking about her concerns that there's so many outstanding recommendations that are still on the table, some 69 of which. 40% for those recommendations are from 2016 to 2020. So no real excuses available for pandemic-related matters, election-related matters. The province's AG, Denise Hanrahan, right after the break. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the province's Auditor General. That's Denise Hanrahan. Good morning, Denise. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
So before we dig into some of the 69 outstanding recommendations, you're talking about a worrisome trend. Describe what's trending.
Since I've become the Auditor General, of course, a marker for me has been the performance by the province with respect to implementing our recommendations. And last year we were at about 40%, and this year we're at about 40%. Last year we were, the trend continues to weaken, and we're finding that we're just not getting the same impact. Last year it was 1 in 3. This year it's 2 in 5 that are still outstanding. And the real worrisome trend, I guess, for me is that 83% of my recommendations from before 2017 are still outstanding.
One of the worries, there's different areas, whether it be Memorial University, the Newfoundland and Labrador Liquor Corp, but let's talk about healthcare. Just about $4 billion out of about a $10 billion budget. What sort of recommendations are outstanding in that envelope?
So Some of the major areas that we're finding that are still outstanding, one particularly would be our provincial home support program. We did an audit in 2017, and we're still finding that 5 recommendations that I suspect are still very relevant or outstanding. We have recommendations related to acute care bed management, physicians, road ambulance, many aspects of the health sector.
And we will hear, I don't know if I call them excuses. Yes, I'll call them excuses about the pandemic and elections in 19 and 21 and what have you. But when we're talking about some of these recommendations that are they're approaching a decade old, when you offer your concerns via questions to the government, what kind of reaction do you get?
In some cases, we're told that programs may have changed or priorities have changed. We do allow for, in our assessment of recommendations, for things to be otherwise resolved. So if something is not relevant anymore, we will consider that one completed or otherwise resolved. But most times when we scratch at the explanations that we're getting, we're finding that there's partial implementation. So something's been drafted, but it's not been approved, or it hasn't been implemented. And I really continue to scratch my head over why some of these areas, which were identified before the pandemic, weren't handled within the 3 years that we expected after our report.
Now, you have allowed for some big things that have changed, like the amalgamation of all the regional health authorities under the one banner, and of course all the big changes in education. But when you look at some of the outstanding issues, in particular, conflict of interest, internal controls, and fraud management. Can you give us any specifics regarding fraud management and internal controls? Because we've long understood the conflict of interest issues that are persistent inside government, but let's talk fraud management.
So when we released our annual report earlier this year, this was an area that we highlighted that we found there were significant gaps in the government program. We've given kudos to the fraud management program in general, but we're finding a lot of gaps across the organization where staff just simply don't know or don't have the information that they may need to even understand what is a potential fraud or what the risks are. So it's certainly been a big area for us from an overarching perspective to see those gaps, and certainly something that we've highlighted in the past. Like you mentioned, it is a very big, complex organization, and you need strong controls to be sure that the right amounts are paid at the right time to the right people, be it from payroll to expenses to purchases of sand and salt for the roads. And we're finding that in a lot of cases there are significant gaps in the programs used to control that, and even in the approach to dealing with some of the gaps that we saw.
It's pretty concerning because the issues regarding how our money is handled and or mismanaged is really should be concern of all. In the broad scope of things. So we know that you answer to the House of Assembly, but without any real authority to ensure that the recommendations are adhered to, what's next steps here? Because we had Paul Lane on the show the other day talk about the fact that there might have to be some changes regarding implementation and enforcement, whether it be pink slips or ministers personally called to the mat, which is probably difficult too, considering it's a bit of a turnstile. Ministers change, although senior bureaucrats remain. So are there any thoughts from you and your office about how you'll have a bit more teeth to hold government accountable? Because your work is critically important, but if they just sort of see it and they read it and then they just let time lapse and then people hopefully forget about it, what should we be doing here?
So, we do the best we can to keep our topics in the public purview, and I thank you for the opportunity to talk about my reports because I think that is a big part of keeping the accountability in the public and keeping people held accountable. We do our audits. There's a lot of time and money spent by my office and our clients when we're in there to look at programs, and we're very much about going forward, fixing it going forward. And so when you do all that work and you have practical, reasonable recommendations that can be implemented, of course, it's frustrating. So one of the things that we do, of course, is this annual report. We've had excellent support from our Public Accounts Committee, who have been very engaged with us, and I know are currently pursuing what actions they can take, be it public hearings. I know they've engaged in the past with a lot of documentation with departments looking for action plans. But you're not wrong from the perspective of my reports ultimately have recommendations, and the best that I can do is to inform the Public Accounts Committee and to make sure that I continually report on the actions people take, I've got 7 years to go. I'm not planning on going anywhere, so I'll keep talking about these, or I'll re-audit them, which to me is the most expensive option of the lot.
Yeah, and it should be unnecessary. Remind the folks the audits that you're working on now. And I know some of it's the private contracts in healthcare.
Yeah, so right now we are going to have a report come out this week related to the Oil and Gas Corp of Newfoundland and Labrador, Oil Co. We'll also have a report in the next few weeks related to members and ministers' expenses of the House of Assembly. So we'll have both those reports out before the summer really hits. We are working on as well for the fall release, looking at Crown lands and some of the assessments of that. And we have talked about the health contracts. So we're looking at specifically the health sector with respect to contracts, and we will be including the travel nurses issues in that audit, and our expectation is to have that out by the end of the year. We did give a little update when we released the Mana report to talk about the little bit of sampling that we've done so far. Really hasn't been reassuring. We found that the paid rates weren't competitive. We found that the health authorities didn't follow normal processes, that there were exemptions used, found some inconsistency across the various health regions on contract terms, and some reimbursements of expenses. So certainly know that there's going to be some impactful findings in that audit. And we're also currently actively auditing the RNC operations, supply in housing, and certainly we're looking at memorial infrastructure. We're doing personal care homes. We've been asked to do that by the Public Accounts Committee and pursuing that one. And we're also looking at the MCP system. So we've got a lot of work on the go.
It sounds like it, which means a lot of reading for me.
Well, that's good.
Yes, absolutely. Help us understand the terms of reference or the mandate inside the private contracts in healthcare. I know you mentioned travel nurses, and that's a big one because, of course, the reliance on them has exploded over the years. Even though they tell us there's some sort of roadmap to reduce our reliance on travel nurses, what that looks like, I have no idea. But with the private contracts, are we talking like everything as big as the most valuable ones, say, be with the Compass Group in addition to travel nurses? Because the travel nurses grab the attention of folks because the money year over year grew exponentially. So are you going to look at things like the Compass Group?
So we knew that there was always a degree of contracting that happens right across the public service for the delivery of some services by private contractors or for-profit contractors, and there's lots of delivery by not-for-profit contractors. When the travel nurses issues became news, and we certainly were aware of the Globe and Mail article, but we also knew that and a lot of times when a topic gets really public, a lot of other things happen, and our lens did go to other complaints and comments we had heard from the public with respect to other contracts. Certainly Compass or any kind of contract that's been gone through the health sector came up. So what we decided to do from a mandate perspective on this one, and while we have looked at the largest contractor, and that's some of the findings I mentioned that we've already seen, and we are working closely with our colleagues in New Brunswick who just released theirs, and they focused in specifically on that. We thought there would be more value for us to look at contracting in general. We're primarily focused on assessing healthcare contracts as they relate to the conditions and processes around procurement of services. So we're looking at how the contract is found, how it's developed, that before service begins, how did we get there? Because we did get many questions asked of us related to healthcare about sole sources or things not going to tender or things like that. So we thought we would have a look at that. And then the other part was we would look at administration, operation, and oversight of contracts. So once a contract is struck, we would look at the compliance with those contracts. And some of what we found already when we looked at the one big contract that we've looked at so far have indicated a lot of inconsistencies within those. And we will acknowledge, and I think it'll come out as we go through the audit, the opportunity that is potentially posed by the consolidation if you can have one set of policies or procedures that overarch the organization. But we'll go through these contracts and see what we can find, but that's the two primary scope mandates that we're looking at right now.
And just a quick question before I let you go. Does your office have the legal authority, say for instance, when looking at a private contract, to also go a step further and talk about who some of their private contracts might be with as subcontractors, because it will end up being part of the bottom line. So, for instance, and I hate to keep leaning on the Compass Group, but they would have hired many other types of workers, whether it be through security or otherwise, where that's a subcontract, but it's inside their private realm. Do you have the opportunity to look at any of those types of contracts?
Our legislation lets us follow any public funds where they land. There's some exceptions in our Act, but generally, if money has been spent on a government service, we can follow it to ensure that we receive the service that we paid for. So, with respect to this particular one you're mentioning, I wouldn't be able to tell you for sure. But if we could not find within the documentation proof that service was provided or goods were received, those types of things, so that's really what we'd be looking for as part of an assessment. Then we would expect that we would continue to pursue that in some form. Now, where we would get and how we would get there, I guess we'll see if it comes up in this audit. But we do have the ability, and it's predominantly what we call chase the money, the ability to follow funds that flow from the province to someone. But as you know, we have lots of contractual arrangements in the province that involve subcontractors. I'm sure it happens with all kinds of construction and service delivery. So we'll probably encounter that as we go along and see if we can satisfy what our pursuit is when we get into the belly of the audit. I
appreciate the time as usual, Denise. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Denise Hanrahan, the province's AG. Before the break, let's go to line 2. Loretta, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty. My husband and I were at Tim Hortons last month before we went away on holiday, and he left his fob, laid it down on the counter, and the gentleman behind him obviously picked it up. And he went on with our keys in his pocket, and we've advertised a bit. Well, we haven't heard anything, so we just got back, and we would like to know if there is anybody out there who has an extra GMC fob in their pocket, if they could kindly return it to us.
Hopefully they do exactly that. There's also a Facebook Lost and Found group, which seems to have some success as well. So I would suggest you post it there in addition to this call. So it's either lost or whatever the right word is for someone who picked up this GMC fob. Okay?
Yes, there was a man behind my husband, and Bill laid down his keys, and obviously the other gentleman must have picked them up because we couldn't find them anywhere.
Okay. You want to give out your number here or just leave it with David Williams?
I left it with Dave.
Okay. Fingers
and
crossed.
I appreciate this. Thank you.
My pleasure,
Bye-bye.
Loretta. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, so if you have that key fob, it's of no use to you. Just give it back. Another quick one, another PSA. So, missing beagle on Shaw Street answers to Maggie is wearing a brown collar, no tags. If you see a beagle in and around Shaw Street or on and around Shaw Street, Maggie the beagle is missing. Call Jude, 709-769-2834. That's 709-769-2834. Let's take a break. When we come back, Eliza's there to talk about a doctor shortage in Bonavista. David's in the queue to talk about a wetlands debate going on with the St. John City Council, and lots of time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. David Brake, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy.
Hi there.
I wanted to draw people's attention to the fact that the city of St. John's is debating a measure that will remove some protection from the wetlands around the city, and it's doing the debate's kind of disappointing because the debate seems to be centered around what number in the score of how important a wetland is would allow wetlands to be developed on, when nobody's established that wetlands should be actually developed on at all.
Okay, so
I don't understand.
What is the debate currently? You say it's disappointing, and so just elaborate on that.
So quite reasonably, the city has lots of wetlands around it. Currently, you're not allowed to build on any. They ask themselves, well, could we have a measure that could help us to decide whether a particular piece of wetland was important or not? They did find such a measure, and they did some testing, and they came up with a way of grading wetlands from 1 to 10. They then, and this is where it's baffling, they then asked the city staff, can we have a number for what wetlands we can say are okay to build on? And staff provided a number, 5. But there's nothing behind that number. In fact, the people who designed this measure specifically said, it only tells you whether wetlands are more or less precious. It doesn't give you any permission or guidance as to whether it's really okay to build on them. That's a political decision. So now, in the last couple of months, council's been going back and forth and going, maybe the number should be 5, maybe it should be 6, maybe it should be 0. The feds certainly have said, don't build on this stuff unless you absolutely have to. The municipal plan says that it wants to protect and preserve wetlands, but this debate notionally about protecting wetlands is about removing some protection from wetlands, which we all agree are important, without any actual evidence that it needs to be or should be. I don't understand it.
Well, I mean, for starters, wetlands, for a variety of reasons, are pretty important. They're one of the best ecosystems, the most productive ecosystems in the country, if not in the world. Some of the control it allows for flooding is extremely important. We've seen some quasi-wetlands or bogland that has been developed over and consequently produces an enormous flooding risk downhill from. So building on a wetland seems to be curiously bizarre, period.
Yeah, well, that was my thought. I'm not an expert. I am an academic, so when I see academic work being used to justify stuff, it does raise my hackles. But you don't have to listen to me. One of the first people to write to the council saying, "Hey, what's up?" is a guy called Jonathan Sharp, who is an actual wildlife biologist, and he designed, along with he worked with the creator of this measure to help customize it for Newfoundland. And he wrote the council saying, hey, not only does my measure not actually give you permission to build on wetlands, he's also concerned, and rightfully so, that if the city does decide that this measure gives them some license to allow building on wetlands, it sets a bad precedent for the rest of the province, right? Because what St. John's does, sometimes other parts could say follow, especially if unlike us, other parts of the province don't have the resources to do their own studies. They might go, oh, well, good enough for St. John's, good enough for us. As you say, wetlands are super important. So I'm not saying, and wouldn't say, we need to protect every last bit of wetland. I don't know that's the case. I just think if we want to decide which wetlands to save and which not, it's not good enough to just say, well, these are more important. We need to be able to say, this is what important enough means to us. And the council's not doing that. It's just saying, well, we've got a number that would protect half the wetlands. It seems kind of good enough. We could set the number higher and protect a quarter. We could set it, but they're not asking the fundamental question, which is, what justifies building on the wetlands at all? Why is that number? It's a bit like the debate over pedestrians getting hit by cars. We used to be like, we should reduce that, and then some places decided, no, we need a vision 0. We need to start from the point of view, no pedestrians should be hit by cars, and see how close we can get to that. Maybe that's the kind of approach that City of St. John's and other places need to look at. It's, okay, well, we don't want any building on wetlands because we know how valuable they are. Seems logical. However, in extremis, maybe we might want to allow a bit, but we need to justify that. Instead, we just seem to have well, let's suck it and see, and 50% of terrible is still only half terrible.
Half terrible is all bad enough. I appreciate the time. I'm pretty late for the news. David, final thoughts?
Final thoughts is councillors say, who want to defend increased amount of development on the wetlands, say, how can we have more affordable housing if we don't, allow development on wetlands, which is a total canard in my view. There are, as I've done recent research on this, there's a million things that the city could do to enable more affordable housing. It has completely failed to act on. So going to developing wetlands seems like the worst possible way to accomplish that goal.
I appreciate the time. Thank you, David.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Take care.
All right, break time. Eliza, you're next to talk about doctors in Bonavista. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Eliza, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
I don't think I've ever been so nervous before as what I am this morning.
Why is that?
Well, there's a growing concern. There's been a growing concern for years regarding the doctor situation in Bonavista for the area. And we know that last year we had 2 doctors signed to do emergency, and with somewhat family practice. We don't know how much. And to date, as far as we know, those 2 physicians will have reached the end of their contract. One has already reached the end, and the other, if not already in June, will be reached the end of her contract. So to date, we don't know if they have re-signed, if they're going to, or if they're not going to. So the people of this area, were kind of bewildered and almost to a point of feeling despair because we have no idea what's happening. So, and now our other physician, which is a full-time family physician, our only one that's working out of our hospital, the only physician, has said that she will be resigning by the end of the summer. She's telling her patients, and I'm one of them, that make another appointment, and she's going to try to see all of her patients one more time before she leaves. Now, after saying that, I don't know if she's sent in her resignation, if it's been accepted. We are not sure of anything. So the people around here, we don't know where we're headed and what we're headed for. But I can't help but go back to last March when a group of us went to the House of Assembly, and the minister on that same day announced that whatever money it takes to fill the positions, they're going to do it, whatever money. And he also indicated there is no cap on what government is willing to spend. Now, we know it's not always about just the money only. There's other issues that affect why a doctor stays on at a place or if they don't. But when the minister says such a powerful statement like that and committed to it last year, and the positions were filled, but now those positions plus the full-time family position may or may not. I got to be careful, how to choose my words because I only want to say what I know. And if I'm saying something that it's not completely accurate, I don't mind being corrected. But those positions are up again now. So is the minister going to say, okay, we're going to continue on with this money, whatever it takes, because whatever it takes, the people need it. The people need it. Don't throw money at something and then just toss it by the wayside because we're paying attention. We're paying a lot of attention, more so, I think, than what a lot of people realize. Because if you don't pay attention, we'll be in bigger trouble. And it's very concerning, very, very concerning. And there's one thing that about the physician, the family physician, that says, and we hope she doesn't leave, but says she is, she held the fort. The only one that held the fort through probably the roughest times in the history of healthcare, like during the pandemic. And I go back to what Premier Fury said about, he did acknowledge that our healthcare is in crisis. Maybe not all of it, but some parts of it. And went on to say something similar to the pandemic. It amplified during the pandemic. But I was just listening to our Auditor General. Well, we all know that things were bad years before the pandemic. So our health care was in decline for many, many years. And people talked about it, but we didn't see much action until we went into a state of, I don't know what we went into a state of. And the people around here now, a lot of people are complacent because they are trusting it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. But it won't work out if people don't take a stand, because things slip through the cracks, and there's a lot more slipping through the cracks than what a lot of people realize. And I'd like to say to the minister, you know, you need to uphold what you said last year, because those positions are on the table again. And we need positions. We are one of the most busiest Category B hospitals in this province, and it's highly recognized. And there was a doctor who was advocating to get the status of our hospital changed. Now she's probably in a better position to come back at that now, and let's start again, because there are Category B hospitals that we're all lumped in together. And that is not, if you had to size up all the facilities and the services that come from these facilities, they're all different. Some are very close to larger facilities, and we're an hour and a half away, and we're in trouble. We are in trouble. And this morning, well, the past 3 mornings, I got to say this, Patty, because I'm not the only one that feels like this, but the past few mornings, when I got up, after a short time, I closed my eyes, and all I could see was a dark veil. It was black. I couldn't see beyond that. I couldn't see any light. I didn't know where to turn. I said, oh, my gosh, like what is our next step?
Well, maybe inside the 25 new doctors hired, some of them might be heading in your direction.
I'm not even going to give a reply to that one, because why don't somebody come out and tell us, like, anything at all? Last year they were talking about this, you know, this and that, and there was one coming from Ireland, and there was multiple doctors signed, and where are they? Like, really, where are they? And I think if you look at the collaborative care team, which I'm learning a bit more about it, but I can't say I know very much, but it appears to look like they're just robbing Peter to pay Paul for physicians to be a part of the collaborative care team. There's a lot to be said, and there's a lot more that's, I'd say, going to be said. But in the midst of that darkness I felt this morning, I looked at some papers around me, and I said, Liza, what are you doing? What are you doing fighting the system? And this feeling of despair came over me, the feeling of giving up. Because sometimes it feels like you can't beat the system. But out of that darkness this morning, I came back into the light, and now I know that we're going to fight stronger than ever.
Okay.
And, okay.
I appreciate the time, Eliza. Thanks for the note, too.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There we go. Final break of the morning. When we come back, 106 Airport Road. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the PC member for Steveville Port. He's the leader of the official opposition. That's Tony Wakeham. Good morning, Tony. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Patty. I just wanted to follow up on some of your preamble this morning when it came to the discussions around the Comfort Inn and some of the questions, I guess, that we still don't have answers to that I did ask in the House of Assembly this session, and I'm still waiting on answers for. And there's things we do know and there's things we don't know. We do know that on January of 2024, of course, the Furry Liberals announced that they'd be leasing the Comfort Inn at $6.9 million, $21 million over 3 years, and that the city records indicate that it actually has a value at $3.7 million. We also know that the contract was granted without a competitive tender to a known Liberal donor. And I do know that $13 million has been budgeted in the 24-25 budget for this year for the Comfort Inn. $7 million going to pay the lease and $6 million going to pay the operating costs. We also know in January the government, the Liberal government, said that, and I quote, we're not hoping, we're sure that we'd be moving people in around the end of March. So again, that hasn't happened. So I asked in the House, specifically to the minister, about a breakdown of this $6 million operating budget, and he said he didn't have it, but he would provide me with the breakdown of what that consisted of. I still haven't gotten the breakdown yet. You know, when I do basic math, around $13 million being budgeted, 100 rooms planned. I mean, that's $130,000 per room. $130,000 per room per year, or almost 11,000 room per month. Again, the minister talked about a phased-in approach for occupancy, and I asked for a particular date that it would be at full occupancy. Again, no answer. As of May the 22nd, I think there were 11 residents in the actually living in the facility. So there's lots of questions still unanswered. And we know in homelessness now, the government has said that they're going to contract with this organization, a great organization, to manage this facility. And they've talked about the need for up to 100 people that would be working there. So again, I asked the minister for, give us a breakdown of what those 100 people will look like. We've heard lots of talk around wraparound services. So I wanted to find out exactly what makes up the 100 people that we're talking about here. How many, for example, would be security? How many are social workers? How many are nurses? How many are psychologists? How many are addiction counselors? What's the actual breakdown? But again, to date, we have not managed to get any of that information.
It'd be nice to know. I mean, the thought about what the property is worth if it was going to be sold, and we never even entertained the concept of buying it versus what they've done. And as a matter of fact, it was a Comfort Inn as well in BC that the government bought. So, and nor do we know what happens after the course of 3 years. What led me into Comfort Inn this morning was, about emergency shelters and the standards and what are they. And the fact we're the only province in the country, as far as I can tell, paying private landlords to operate these shelters. There's 3 landlords operating 7 shelters, 79 beds, $2.7 million last year. That's a 55% increase, and yet here we have this facility on Airport Road. And we don't really know where we are. It was 11 residents and 10 staff last we heard. The breakdown of what the staff are, no idea.
And we did an ATIP request to follow up on your point, which showed that as of April 1st, there was actually 63 people living in those for-profit shelters, and instead of at the Comfort Inn. So again, why? Why is that happening? And we also know that when we asked about temporary accommodations for those experiencing housing issues, that between January and March of this year, there was actually $4 million spent. So again, the first 3 months of the year, we spent $4 million. At the same time, we've leased a hotel that basically has sat empty. So these are questions, and you're right. I mean, the Fury Liberals said they were going to release the Shelter Standards Report, and that was due to be released, in my understanding, on June the 3rd, but we have not seen it yet.
No, and this is not one of those gotcha moments either, because we've seen the conditions in some of these shelters. They're not all created equal. Some of them aren't as bad as the others, but, it was just last week or the week before, they were trying to figure out in a court of law what the sentence should be for the fellow who stabbed and killed Raina Dove. So we know what's happening there, and whether or not government even should be in that business of paying private landlords in this current setup, given the very rare inspections, enforcement of any standards, even though we're not even sure if there were any in place over the course of the last number of years. So it's all strange to begin with.
It is, and again, the other thing we pointed out is this services that this Comfort Inn will provide. Is that inn going to be available to benefit people, for example, to live outside the metro area? Is there any of the room allocations going to be for other people other than just inside the metro area? That's another question that, of course, has not been answered.
Well, I would imagine the answer was probably yes to that, because we do know that many people seeking services will come to St. John's because the services are here versus where they've left. So I would imagine the criteria eligibility doesn't mean you need a fixed address in this city, because many of the people that would be in the emergency shelters probably don't have a fixed address either. So I suppose we're going to be able to accommodate motivate whoever are the right people, the right candidates for the transition, because that's also something lost in the shuffle here. Is it's not just about having a room with a lock and wraparound services. We need to, and I'm not trying to be cold here, but with a captive audience, we need the concept of transition to be front and center, the foremost. It's one thing to give people a safe, dignified place to be sheltered, but the hope is that they transition to back on their own 2 feet, with getting help with their addictions, with getting help with their mental well-being, and yes, maybe some job training, possibly enrolled in the employment stabilization program. Because if we just focus on a roof over your head, we're missing the big part of what they refer to this place as a transition home.
Totally. And that ultimately has to be the goal. And any plan that we develop, anything we do has to be what is the end result? Because you're right, it seems that a lot of things we're doing these days are reactionary. And we do not have those strategic plans developed to say what our targets is, what our goals are, because that's what appears to be missing. We've had lots of different announcements from this government, but never what I would argue is a strategic plan that focuses in on how we're going to fix things and what it's going to look like. We continue to make announcements. We continue to make announcements about things in the future.
Okay, Tony, that said, what's your plan?
Well, the first thing we're going to do when we form government, Patty, is we're going to actually turn around and go in and look at all of the programs and services we're currently offering, because I will go back and say we're spending a lot of money in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, but we've got all these wonderful programs that we've set up over the years, but it's time to stop pressing the replay button and simply adding more money. It's time to go in and make sure to look at what was the goal of this particular program. Why did we set this up? What was our end objective? Are we meeting that objectives? Because that's what we seriously have to do, because we've seen too many people who are being left behind in this province of ours right now, whether it's to do with the cost of living, whether it's to do with mental health and addictions, whether it's to do with access to health care. But we have all the programs and services that we continue to have and are in front of us, and we continue to spend money on. But have we done that? And I'm not talking about hiring consultants and going out and doing massive reports again that sit on shelves somewhere. What I'm talking about is digging in, talking to the people that are using the programs, talking to the organizations that are supporting these programs, talking to people like that to say, tell us how this is working or tell us how this is not working, and let's get it done.
Appreciate the time, Tony.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tony Wakeham, the PC member, Stephenville Port-au-Port, leader of the official opposition. To deal with some of those issues, you know where I would start? Even though I'm sure you don't care where I would start? K-12. Starting the education system. Do better there. All right, good show today. Big thanks for everyone who supports the program, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.